So thank you. So I'm just going to put a couple of slides here to remind about the pre-reading. Just to mention that gender-based violence also domestic abuse is a form of gender-based violence. It's not the only one. There are various elements to the definition. Domestic abuse is defined as includes a definition is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening behavior between intimate partners or family members. So it's just to if it's husband, wife, but of course we know there can be other perpetrator. A wife can be a perpetrator, of course. Other family members can be perpetrators. We want to highlight that children witnessing domestic abuse is considered a form of domestic abuse. Our clients and our family reunion type of context, but we're going to focus on husband-wife in these sessions. The domestic abuse can be physical abuse or any of these other elements, of course. It's not only that. And domestic abuse always seems to have an element of controlling coercive behavior. And that has been legislated in 2015, only in 2015. And there's it's a separate legal definition. We'll let you read this in detail as a handout later. But just mentioning in there because it can help, think about the sessions in detail. So sorry, is there any question? Really? So, okay, sorry, there's somebody who unmuted the mic, so I thought it was a question. So the next session, the next activity is a breakout room activity. Yes, thank you. It's here on the slide. I will put you in 2 breakout rooms. We'll have about 15-20 minutes to discuss. And then if somebody could kindly take notes to feedback as a group. We've got the same scenario, but there will be some questions. Let me just create the breakout rooms if everyone is okay. So we had a very good chat in our group. Does anybody want to start us off with some feedback, please? We all had the same scenario, but.
Do you want me to share? I took down the notes, yeah, Janet. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I tried my best to write down what everybody shared. I'll go through maybe question at a time. Is that helpful? So what information you need to establish urgency and make a referral to safeguarding. Yeah, checking how imminent the danger is to happen again, which says. Checking whether she feels safe to go back home today, asking that question. I think, yeah, mentioning that because there's children involved, that we will have to disclose this to the safeguarding team, and there might be then an element of involving children's social services. So just mentioning that. And then in terms of what information you'd like from her before the meeting ends, yeah, I mean, asking her whether it's possible to talk a bit longer now, whether she feels like she could, you know, make something up that might be on their agenda that she could say, oh, I'm just talking with casework about this as well, to her. Getting her phone number, so that you could, yeah, and agreeing some sort of like safe word or some sort of contact mechanism. If she has a phone, if she doesn't have a phone, it was mentioned that in future the group session could be used as a touch point to speak with her again. Checking if she doesn't have a phone, maybe if a friend has a phone number that she could share with us. What other information would we want from the wife? Maybe asking what she'd want to do. Yeah. What key information you'd want to give to the wife and keeping in contact if needed. So making sure she has your phone number and contact details. Making sure she knows how to contact 999 and request an interpreter. And something around legal advice and not promising that if there was separation that she would be able to get domestic violence concession, and definitely Tremaine, not promising that, but just mentioning there are legal routes to looking at whether you could stay if there was separation. I hope I've covered everything. I suppose, yeah, and just thank her for sharing, that she's done a good job in just, yeah, sharing that with us, and just affirming what she's shared. Yeah, I think that's everything that I had down. Really good.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Does anybody from the other group want to add, or there's anything that's, you know, they want to add to this?
Yeah, I'll add what our group discussed. I mean, it was a lot of the similar things. I think it was, yeah, someone said that it's important that Zara makes an informed decision, and they kind of need to think about everything in terms of like her immediate, like in the immediate is her safety, and kind of longer term looking at immigration status. Other things that we thought key information we'd want from her in the kind of short time frame that we had with her would be things that Joe said, and also kind of ask a question about the children and whether Khalid's violent towards the children, so kind of try and get that information out. And yeah, as well as kind of, does she have a phone number, try and kind of ascertain when we could contact her, or when could we next speak to her, could she come and see us, or however you communicate with her. And then in terms of the last question, what key information we'd want to give her would be similar things to what Joe has said. Also, yeah, kind of affirm her disclosure, so kind of make sure that she knows that we've heard her and we believe her, so that she's kind of confident to speak again, just in case this is like the first time she's disclosed domestic abuse. Mention like confidentiality, but also that we have a duty to act if the children are in danger. And kind of debunk any myths, and like what Khalid had said, that she'd get deported or she'd be homeless, and kind of make sure that she knows her rights. We spoke about kind of exploring who else she's spoken to and what kind of the relationships are with with her family in the UK, and kind of suggesting to her that she has a place or a kind of small bag or something with important documents if she needed to leave quickly, and giving her kind of key contacts and key and information about other organisations that might be relevant or she might need to contact. I think that was it. If anyone else wants to add anything.
Thanks, Anna and Joe. So just a quick feedback from us on the next slide. Practically, as caseworkers, we need to do a basic risk assessment. We'll talk about specifically about risk assessment and safety in session 3. But to understand, is abuse increasing over time? What's the urgency? Is this an imminent threat? We always go to safeguarding advice on all domestic abuse cases. We cannot promise full confidentiality as there are possible child safeguarding issues here. And really to highlight that this is a very difficult case to come across as part of as a caseworker or a facilitator in a women's only session. BRC is not a specialist domestic abuse organization, and the last thing that Anna was saying reminded me that, has she spoken to anybody else about this? Is there any other domestic abuse specialists involved? It might not be the case. We might be the first organization that hears her disclosure, but it's just to bring into the conversation our approach is to recognize, in this case, support the disclosure. We have to report and refer and focus on referrals. The type of casework that we offer is not usually long-term, maybe FRIS a little bit more, but other parts of the Red Cross not so much. So we always go to safeguarding, and those who came to the session 1, we heard from the safeguarding team, and they have some real specialism about domestic abuse, but it's also what they were talking about is also their role is to support us in agreeing the course of action and making sure we think about all the detail that is needed. And referring on ensures that we, without, just here's, we've done domestic abuse referral, but we can have a role in a triangulation on some cases, maybe through the safeguarding team, but triangulation means we can follow up and we can keep involved in the situation, but for example, for if somebody stays in a situation and have a proper full plan on safety and risk assessment. So just to make us feel that we don't have to deal with it all, but you may want to consider safety at all times, and especially when working remotely. We'll have a chance to speak about it a little bit later. Remember the importance of data entry, so what to put on BRM and what to put on Datix. And I think that's the top feedback from me. There'll be a handout that we'll send to you later. Are there any other questions? Oh, just one final thing. The manual aims to support you working with RSRFL clients from a gender perspective and provide practical gender-sensitive strategies. It does not intend to mandate a course of action. Yeah, that course of action needs to be agreed with the safeguarding team. We said that. And yes, just a reminder that you're dealing with a high-risk situation in all domestic abuse cases. So unless there are any other questions, we're in really good time and we can move on to the second activity for the day. Right, so I'll read you the second activity. Here we'll discuss as an open discussion. If please take turns, and you know, if anything pops up, also use the. I will have a look at the notes. If you want to put something in the notes section, we'll have about 10-15 minutes. So. A few weeks later, Khalid calls the office number. He has tried to call you several times while you're in a meeting. Your colleague, an admin assistant, answers the call. Khalid is distressed that their joint universal credit payment has stopped, and he doesn't know why. Khalid wants another appointment with you to resolve the problem with the couple's universal credit. The admin assistant checks his BRM record to see what casework has been done. The admin assistant notices an action on Khalid's planned response, follow-up action, ring the spouse to check if she's heard from Women's Aid or solicitor, and a reference number and see DATIX. Khalid is put on hold and your colleague finds you and to check on the situation. So with this scenario, we'd like you to think about good gender casework management in the context of working with families. What are your key considerations on? Stephanie, the questions are on the next slide, please. Yeah, how would you continue casework with the sponsor in a safe way? How can you improve your practice to ensure a gender-sensitive approach? And can you think of situations you would find it difficult to work with both the wife and the sponsor? Does anybody would like to start us off with some thoughts?
Well, shouldn't the wife have her own BRM page so that their BRMs are separate going forward?
Yeah, that's part of the importance of data management is part of this activity.
What about saying case is sensitive, every BRM note, the caseworker makes notes about the cases and it's sensitive, it shouldn't be discussed with the husband, so I don't know. I'm
sorry, I didn't understand.
So what about putting notes on BRM notes saying it's case sensitive, it shouldn't be discussed with other partner?
So I was going to say, because caseworkers aren't safeguarding officers, they can't review DATIX reports. So what we do is on the person's front page where it says like special needs in BRM, often we'll put something in capitals, or by the phone number for the client, we'll put a note of like, you know, how safely to contact someone or if there's kind of like a major issue. So someone just going into the BRM can be immediately aware of the situation.
Yeah, we would also flag, well, I suppose depending on what state, like if it was just after the disclosure, you might not have got to this point, but we would usually flag anyone like that as high risk on BRM, so that if they were trying to make an appointment, we would know that you would have to see them with 2 people in the room, and that there would also be enough staff in the building, and people are aware that this person coming in is high risk and what to do if something happens during this appointment and how to respond to that.
Yeah, you're both raising, I mean, all of you have been raising the importance of data. Where do you put the information? I mean, it's not about where do you put it today, but like to consider the importance of data management for the safety, to maintain the safety of the disclosure of the survivor, and the importance of protocol. How do you deal with it? So how you use the, you agree and you use, for your office or for your service, standard ways of flagging issues so that you know how to prepare for an appointment or when you read a file.
And currently on BRM, you can record sensitive information, but if I record sensitive information on Virginia's file, for example, only I can go in and view that. So there is a bit of a, that's the way that BRM has been set up, and we can't change that at the moment. So that does provide some limitation in terms of what you can record and hide it, or just flag that it's sensitive. You'd have to write in the case notes. If you put it in case notes, I don't know how you do that, but yeah, essentially the sensitive information box is only viewable to the person who's recorded it. But marking that person as high risk, I think, Kira, did you say that? That's a good idea. And just making sure that we're recording the work that we've done with a person is on that person's file. So the interaction I've had with you, Virginia, is on your file and not on,
not on the sponsor's. Yeah, I think we all agree that we shouldn't put the disclosure on his file, for sure.
We should also have, there should be high risk client registers. Each office should really have them. Now, we've normally used them for where a client is potentially a high risk to us or to another client, but whether they should encompass clients who are at high risk just generally is another thing. But I mean, I think, and this is not necessarily we're not going to find any solutions here, but people may be aware, we had a client in our area who was at high risk in a domestic abuse situation, on a crime situation, who was relocated to another area and was because of that high risk, and was subsequently murdered by her husband. And because we can't share BRM records, the team where she was relocated to weren't aware that she was at high risk. Now, there was nothing that probably they could have done. The police were involved, social services were involved. She'd been moved because she was at risk. There were lots of measures that were in place, but I think this is a problem with not having national access to BRM, is that it doesn't become immediately apparent if someone moves into your area from somewhere else that, one, they've had that they have had contact with the Red Cross elsewhere, and or that they could be potentially be at risk. Like I say, I don't think it would have changed the outcome, but it was something that made me feel very uncomfortable. And I think it made the team where she relocated to feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. I mean, this example, you cross-reference also to the high-risk guidance that, yes, it focuses more on safety around offices, and we do consider that to be really relevant as well, because there can be a high-risk situation also happening, safety in a wider sense also to staff. It's good to remind that. And yeah, thank you for highlighting this case that, yeah, I think the teams are, safeguarding and others are working on this, and there should be some guidance on BRM, because, yeah, there's a bit of lack of clarity. We do mention a bit of guidance in the manual, but it will have to be updated once this is completed and all approved. Yeah, there are some structural BRM issues. Joe mentioned them, you mentioned, yeah, this really important case, and we can't really solve them ourselves. But yeah, in some way, we all know that it's not really fit for purpose. It's not easy to read if you put the information in the wrong section. Only you can read it. It's almost yeah. That's where it's really important for data. But if we go back to a more basic course of action, yes, is a minimum. You you would expect, like, it's useful. I mean, from a gender perspective, we would really support services like FRIS or Family Reunion to develop wider protocols so that at least data is where it's expected to be. And I know FRIS is going through a lot of this at the moment. So does anybody want to add anything on this point? Or the other part of the question was looking at the importance of acknowledging how we feel and that we might feel a conflict in our work when we're trying to work with both, and how does that approach? Do you have protocols for dividing families, for dividing files, and how, you know, and how do you feel as a caseworker sometimes having to go back and, you know, Stephanie and I were thinking about this example as an example of, okay, he's coming back for because he's having issues with a legitimate part of something that we offer as a service. He's having problem with benefits. So how do you maintain the confidentiality, and some thoughts around that? Maybe?
In Leicester, we've had a case like this before where we were advised to have like 2 lead caseworkers, so one for the husband, one for the wife. And if you can try and meet with the person who's approached you for help by themselves and see what the issue is through that with just one lead caseworker, and see if it is something that can be solved without having to have them both together. But obviously, yeah, we don't know at what point in this situation they're in. Are they still together? Has the wife suddenly left and updated their change of circumstances on Universal Credit? We don't know any of that. So to just establish what the situation is, we would have to meet with the husband, and then see what's happening on their Universal Credit account before setting up any further appointments that might be with just by themselves, or maybe another separate meeting with the work as well. But the main advice we've been given before is to have like 2 separate lead caseworkers.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, that would be,
I think,
sorry, finish your sentence.
Oh yeah, just to finish that train of thought, is I guess because although that disclosure has been made by the wife, we are still kind of supporting the husband because they are someone who was registered to the service, and they're having economic issues which we can help with.
Yeah, absolutely. You're making exactly the point that I was aiming to make. So thank you, Sherry. Yes, I mean, I would say that the fundamental principles would also aim to come to this sort of approach, but as I said, it's case by case, and we would go through the safeguarding team. So, you know, with their advice, you know, there might be situations in which they advise that we shouldn't work with both, but in this case, let's just assume that it's okay. And yeah, we offer, you know, he needs the help about a service that we do offer. So yes, having a face-to-face meeting is probably best in all circumstances in general, but definitely in this case, in case there's a change of circumstances, and that way you can sort of try to meet both of them separately.
I think this is really difficult, isn't it? Because if you're trying to be an advocate for both sides of the story at the same time, and you're trying to fulfill the interests of 2 different people who want 2 different things at the same time, I think that's massively difficult. You know, to continue working with both and to support the interests of the wife, who her own financial support now, and for it not to go to the sponsor or to not move to a particular, maybe the husband insists that he wants to move to a particular area, and you're very well aware that the wife doesn't want to do that. What do you do in that situation? Or if the husband wants to if Khaled wants to continue to receive all the universal credit in his name, but the wife isn't receiving any financial support and wants to receive it in her name, that's a real challenge to continue working with both. Maybe having two leads is the solution, but I don't know. Jerry, how did that go? I don't know how that went for you. Did it work or?
To an extent, I think with the universal credit side, it did work because by that point they had separated already. And it was a matter of explaining to the husband why he can't have all the money anymore, because they also had issues with like child contact, and he was looking after the children. So we kind of had to approach it as a way of explaining like the priority is the needs of the children. So if they have already agreed that the children are going to live with the wife, then she should be getting the benefits for them, and she should have her own benefits. So it was a kind of a weird one where they were actually quite open about it and able to speak about what had happened. But I don't, if it was any earlier in the stage and they didn't know, their wife had approached us and had talked about wanting to leave, I think we'd still have to acknowledge that, yes, he still needs his own support, but then we'd have to explain that we can only help him with what he is entitled to, just himself, I suppose.
I think they could certainly.
How you do that in a way that doesn't flag anything in his mind. Like to have that conversation.
If he's still in the situation.
We'll only support you with things that you need. Oh, you might start to think, what? That's a weird line. Where's that come from? Oh, wait a minute. So I think that's the challenge. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. If you're still in the situation and if they're still in the situation, that's potentially a really difficult thing to do. Hopefully it's a few weeks later, and I hope there's some referral going on. We know that's Women's Aid or solicitor she's waiting for. At least that's what the BRM plan response says. So in a way, just trying to focus on that activity without thinking of the other wishes. It might be very difficult if they're still like not formally separated or something else.
Can I ask, I don't know if my microphone's working anymore. Like apparently it was metallic before. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Can I ask, is the British Red Cross policy on this in terms of, is a strict policy about when you would split caseworkers in instances of domestic abuse? Is it kind of case by case scenario? Is there a sort of
good question. I mean, we would recommend services and or teams in an office to, as I know that there are some protocols and ways of doing things, like agreed ways of doing things. So at least as an office or as service-wide, we'd recommend from a GBV perspective to have that written down so that you can really explain and you really know what to do, at least from the practical point of dividing the file or seeing a client, and rather than having it ad hoc. But whether you continue to work or not, we don't mandate a course of action, because we'd like you to approach safeguarding and agree the course of action itself. But that's what we aim for. Like what we recommend is to have protocols and that can help you standardize your actions your case as a caseworker. That I found when I was a caseworker, it really helped to have like that standardized and reminded from time to time on how we do things. Is there any other question? Because otherwise we'll move to the next activity for like 10-15 minutes.
If we engage with a domestic abuse victim and then at the end of our conversation, the victim says, no, he doesn't, or she doesn't need our help. And then I recently experienced this, then I offered our help, and I mentioned our concern about her safety, but she didn't want to do any help at the moment, but she said she's going to do her application on her own. She's going to arrange solicitor privately. So yeah, I discussed it with my manager, but at the end we couldn't do anything. I wanted to help her, but just she said no, she doesn't want to do it with the Red Cross. No, not specifically with an agency, with an organization. Just she wants to do it on her own, and she wants to do it a kind of friendly way, she said. Okay, I said, and then yeah, I couldn't do anything, to be honest. I'm still worried about her safety, but she said she's okay.
Yeah, good point. I mean, unless there's child safeguarding specific situations where you would have to act, most situations, at least I would think that you can, you obviously speak to safeguarding on this case and just run it past them. But in a way, if she doesn't want to have a referral done, it's fine. I mean, if she wants to deal with it in her way and she feels that she's able to cope with that situation, you would probably want to ask about safety right now and still go through the assessment to make sure she's not, at risk of immediate risk of harm. But beyond that, you might have the situation, it's a very good point, because you might have the situation where she thinks, oh, you're already helping my husband, you won't be neutral enough for me, to help me. So maybe you get that sort of question reversed that we've been discussing. What does anybody, anybody else thinks differently or something else to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's quite, with some people, you might find that because it's called, sorry, I'm finding it really hard putting my sentence together here. Right, so you might have clients or service users who might disclose, okay, I'll use my classes as an example. When we have guest speakers coming in to talk about topics, different topics, and domestic abuse being one of them, we've had women laughingly saying, oh yeah, that happens in my country, but that's okay. And what I'm trying to say is we might come across people who will dismiss domestic abuse and violence because to them it's culturally acceptable, and until the person actually has been given all the right information, for example, through classes, they might just want to just sit back and not do anything about it.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. Thanks, Teresa, for raising this, and you're doing a really important job with classes and this type of work to displace ideas that are like are about different cultural understanding of what is abuse, what is gender-based violence, what is acceptable, what is a crime. In the first chapter of the manual, we go through that a lot, but definitely working with families, you can get that, but as is in general, working with RS-RFL clients from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, and what is acceptable back in their country of origin might not be, and it also takes time. But thanks for raising it, because with Family Reunion, we're working with usually spouses, so women who have newly arrived. So, getting that across, it's really important to have workshops to remind of you get a lot of disclosures through maybe women-only sexual health sessions, because yeah, that brings and opens the conversation about what happens here and what is law here and what is elsewhere. Shall we move on to session 3, activity 3? Stephanie, are you ready to start?
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. My internet dropped out.
Oh.
So this is activity 3, which is a continuation of activity 2. And it's mostly about best practice when working remotely and how to do it safely. So as we know with COVID, private conversations with people subject to domestic abuse are likely to be more challenging and limited because we're not seeing people face to face. There's less opportunities to pick up signs and indicators of abuse and other face-to-face signals. So you'll be relying on a smaller range of clues. Access to interpreters might be difficult. So there's a lot of challenges, and we recognize that. I recognize working from home how much of a challenge it is. So this exercise is to not only see what you've been doing, but to see if we have some suggestions. There's not necessarily a wrong answer here. We're just trying to generate some ideas. Okay. So activity 3, you are continuing to support the couple through first casework. We are in COVID-19 lockdown. The office is closed and there are no face-to-face appointments. Khalid and Zara are still not receiving benefits. You have no choice but continue to work remotely with the couple. Khalid insists on speaking with you over the phone. It's not safe to speak with the wife on the phone while he is there. You're not sure if she has a phone. What do you do? So with this scenario, we'd like to discuss how do you facilitate disclosure over the phone sensitively and effectively? How to have meaningful discussions and assess safety risks with arriving family? And how can we use tech to stay in touch with arriving spouses? So if any of you have, I'm not sure if any of you in lockdown have experienced a remote disclosure over the phone, or if you'd like to exchange experiences.
I think probably we were lucky this time because we had some phone to give to a new arrival. So that service really helped us to not encounter this kind of issue. So otherwise it would be very, very difficult.
Okay.
I think having phone is one issue, and then how to effectively communicate the sensitivity of the disclosure. So I don't know how to deal with that.
I guess
I think a lot of it is about, oh, sorry.
So we have got some kind of, personally, when I met the issue like this, which I have met some of them, the first approach is to make sure that the wife got a phone number, a telephone herself. And of course, with interpreter, we have to ask her to make sure we speak to her when she's on her own, to get her consent, whether she wants to work together in a benefit with her husband. So once she agree on it or refuse, that's where we take it from there.
Yeah, some good points already. Yeah, what we were talking about earlier about having a phone is the key element in order to deal with the wishes of her wife and continue on and conducting casework, and obviously always checking that it's safe, that he's not overhearing. You always need to be tech aware. There's a few tips on the manual in section 4 about really being aware that the controlling in coercive behavior can include somebody that's, you know, paranoid and, well, paranoid, but just always looking at her phone, checking, you know, he might have access to her emails, to her, you know, to her internet browsing, if that's something that that you could expect in this situation. Maybe not, but yeah, always checking that she's on her own and finding a good time to speak. But during the lockdown, where a lot of people have been off work as well, I guess that's really difficult to ensure.
I think encouraging, oh, sorry, Kira, go for it.
I'm sorry. I found that when I had, like, either it was referred as a high risk client, or there was, you know, if I thought there was a disclosure there to be had, I found that it was really important to just, it might take a lot more phone calls than it would in person, and just continuously repeat who we are and the service that we offer. Because we had one woman who had so many different calls from different organizations, she wasn't sure which one was which. So I think constantly repeating, and then even, it sounds kind of stupid, but asking her, being like, oh, do you remember me? Do you remember what organization I'm from? And then she'd be like, oh yeah, you're from the Red Cross. And just making sure that she actually understood what organization we were calling from, I think really helped build that kind of relationship and that trust. And trying where possible as well to have the same caseworker call, so that, you know, she knew that you were the person, you were the person she goes to in the Red Cross to talk to and stuff.
Yeah, and also maybe encouraging her to contact you when she can. So, you know, when you're alone, when you have a free moment, do call me, I'm ready. Maybe messaging her and say, hey, how are you? Are you busy? Call me. I don't know, something that enables her to call you when she's free. I don't know if that's something that you could agree when you have that first disclosure meeting. You know, activity 1, what information do you want to give to Zara? Maybe just letting her know, you know, is there a safe word, or just clarifying, you know, if it's difficult, you know, you phone me when you're free, when you're in a safe space, when you're, you know, you're alone. Trying to agree that maybe beforehand as much as possible would be really helpful.
Yeah, a tip I got, I think it was Safeguarding who gave me this tip as well, that we're just saying that, like, where possible, even being like, can you give me a call when you're out on your daily walk? Can you send me a text and say, I'm out my walk now? And then try as much as possible for the caseworker to grab that opportunity and give them a call.
Hello, yeah, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
Ida, we can hear.
Yeah, also putting into consideration language barrier, I think here the role of peer buddy will be very important, because the new arrivals always trust the people who talk same language. So the peer buddy will play a massive role here. It can also communicate with victims and know the situation. So here I recommended the role of peer buddy as well. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, having the language and making sure, yeah, you can call me, but then you might not be free. It might be a bit tricky, but yes, having the level of contact agreed and how you contact is really important too from the outset. And it's something that you can figure out, yeah, as Jo said, from the first meeting that you've seen her face to face.
Just out of interest, is if a caseworker was in that situation with a woman and they gave the woman their number, would they give them kind of two caseworkers' numbers, or what happens if, you know, the caseworker missed that call because they were busy or something else, or they weren't working that day? How does it work?
I would probably answer it by saying that making it like setting expectations with the family about that it's not just your sole responsibility to support them. You are a member of a team. You have other colleagues that help you occasionally on your work, so maybe they have more than one contact. That could also facilitate in the future if you did need to split the casework. They've already been kind of pre-warned that, you know, maybe you're really busy, you have lots of clients. So you could also frame it in that way, so there's not just reliance on you as a single caseworker.
So you'd give them a couple of numbers. I mean, I presume you'd give them office number as well as mobiles.
So just carrying on then from this, how would it be best practically to deal with a sponsor that just, for example, we're calling them back, but Khalid just wants to speak to us all the time? How do we explain to Khalid or make him see that we need to speak to the wife and the reasons for this?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about our Red Cross policy, how we're not just working with him, or we're working with them as a family, as a group, but also individuals.
Yeah, I think I guess we would have to have set these expectations before, and when we first speak with Zara and Khalid, we'd explain how the service runs, and if we were ever involved with helping them apply for benefits in the first place, it would be good to establish that yes, it's a joint claim, but for each, you know, their own accounts, they need to have their own logins, passwords saved for themselves. And if we need to support them with accessing their accounts, we talk to that individual because it is their account, even though they are linked. I don't know if we could then, if everything's remote, we could then say, for this half hour, we'll talk to you, Khalid, and then in the next half hour, we'd have to speak with Zara because then we need to access her account. And I don't know how like pushy to be with that, because I don't know if that would create more tension. So yeah, I've not been in this situation before.
No, that's good. We do have consent from them as individuals. And when we are, for example, if the sponsor was saying, I want you to get me a national insurance number for my wife so we can get benefits, then yes, it's about her national insurance number. It's about going back and saying, okay, I need to speak to your wife a bit more about this, a bit more in depth. So looking for opportunities where you can make conversations that would either include the wife or would mean that you would have to have a separate conversation. And as I said, that could revolve around health, particularly with the children. If they've been separated for a long time, it's highly likely that the wife is going to have more. She's going to know more about the practical things like the injections that the children have had, or how they've actually been doing the last couple of years. Is there more support that they might need in school? So it's also trying to think of other topics that don't necessarily exclude the sponsor, but that maybe she would have more knowledge on, and use those topics to try and reach out to do a bit more individualized casework.
Could we also explain that the other services that they might need to contact, for example, DWP and the job centre, explain that they would always ask to speak to the person who it's about anyway, and it would have to be Zara to give her name and date of birth and address. So they might as well get used to us doing that as well.
Yeah. It's true they will get treated as individuals by most, or should be treated as individuals by other statutory services.
So would you sort of say that having expectations in advance could be covered, like maybe in a service sort of agreement at the early stages? Like, again, I speak about protocols, but so that the sponsor knows that it's from the outset, knows it in advance, so that then if there is a safeguarding or a possibility like of, of developing a relationship, so you have it there that in advance, that you expect to speak to the wife on her own as well. And I mean, if we combine all the issues that families can have, like maybe not having a mobile phone even, and having to go through the husband all the time, I find it really tricky. But if not, then sort of, yeah, if you have something that is explained at the very early outset, and it can help to sort of to just refresh and remind. Oh, what do you think?
I guess the new like minimum standard thing where they call the applicant before they come might set the precedent from the start that the Red Cross wants to work with people individually. So if you did it like through the whole service kind of thing and emphasize that you're working with both of them, that might set like a good precedent. So even before, if it's with family reunion, that is, before people get to the UK, they know that like they're going to be speaking to the applicant as well. It might make it easier to then do it if you're doing refugee support and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you start building the relationship. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the minimum standards is, yeah, was part of my consideration on that. Thanks, Lily.
Of course, when we have been involved in the process of traveling assistance, we always speak to the sponsor and tell them that when the family comes, we will need to speak to them individually when they come. However, it can be happen when we didn't get involved at all. We just knew that they arrived when they already arrived. So that's where sometimes we can be struggling. Yeah.
Like what Steph, you said about, there's some, there's some things, this, for example, this session is applicable to everybody, but maybe there are some more specific conversations that I would need to have with Jess or with Anna or with Mohammed. And I think that's a normal process, isn't it? There are some conversations that it makes sense to have all together as a family because it affects you all. But there's some conversations that are just better had with the individual because it's relevant for them. and it would just waste other people's time. So I think kind of framing it, you know, like you said, Steph, you know, maybe mum has better knowledge of something, or, you know, referrals to ESOL are only relevant for mum. They're not relevant for the sponsor who's been in the UK for 2 years. So I think normalizing that conversation from the off,
yeah,
so helpful. And actually that's what came out of the community of practice that we had about a month ago on FRIS. You know, just setting this expectation early. We'll meet with the arriving spouse, you know, at some point in the first few weeks, you know, to understand her needs, and because there's stuff that's relevant just for her and not for other people. It'd be a waste of their time. Yeah. So. And this is a conversation when I was a caseworker as well. I'd have separate conversations with the sponsor and with the arriving spouse. You know, there's, you know, health needs that, you know, some people have that other people don't, and that's, you know, confidential conversation, and people are happy to have that separate conversation. And
did you try to do that on a face-to-face setting ideally, or
I
like
mean,
an
yeah,
appointment, or, yeah, in confidence?
yeah, so so it was through an interpreter with the arriving spouse. This was before COVID though. So,
Sure, yeah, I remember.
but yeah, with an not using the sponsor as the interpreter and saying, you know, this is a confidential conversation and this is normal. Other organisations do this. Yeah, check your phone, check the internet, whatever, you know, enjoy your time. And it was always, always really, really productive conversation.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, I mean, yeah, we would recommend a face-to-face as the best option for disclosure. Obviously not possible in remote working conditions. And yeah, you made the point of the interpreter, and, you know, even in the best, with the best intentions, it's never ideal, because even without wanting to hide anything, or, you know, it ends up being like when you interpret through a friend, the same thing happens. They answer for you, and they don't ask the question, they just answer because they most of the time they have the answer. Use professional translators. So we've run out of time already. We're happy to stay a little bit longer for a Q&A. Does anybody want to ask any questions? Or there was one slide that obviously that's to remind of the differences of face-to-face that I put together. I went to the GP, and I remember waiting in the waiting area, and there was this swim wasn't there, but I added it because that's we've got a leaflet that's on our website. Just remind you about that. Is having that in the office can be really just powerful for disclosures, and yeah, it's another difference of not being able to be in the office. But I remember just sitting there thinking, okay, yeah, I have an interest in domestic abuse, but I was just thinking that must be really powerful to see. Just to remember that we don't have that visual aid for people that we talk to if we're not in the office. And there are some resources that are also very useful from external organizations.
I just wanted to mention as well some of the projects that are still ongoing that can help, that can facilitate how we use tech with the sponsor, with the spouse. So we have the DCMS Tackling Digital Loneliness, that's still running for another month. They currently have top-up codes for giffgaff, Libra, Vodafone, Tesco 3, and Daisy Vaughan is the new lead on that. We're also, well, as you might know through FRIS, we're looking at digital empowerment and connection, where women will have their own laptops or tablets but your SMs will give you some more information on that, which is basically an online course of women's rights. And through that, they're hoping to do the Refugee Women Digital Access project to give safe space, women-only spaces online for clients. I know this is happening and is hopefully going to be happening in Frisk in the near future, but SMs will have more information in the next few weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, everyone. Unless you have any other questions, we'll send you an email. We'll follow up with some handouts and a link to an evaluation form. Please give us feedback, honest feedback. It's really appreciated because we can improve the sessions in the future. Thank you for your time and for your contribution.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.